Thank you. And I'm impressed this many are here. The last day on a Friday morning. How many are hungover? Yeah, okay. So appreciate you being here. My name is Andy Trainor. So why the hell are you here to listen to me? One, I don't know. But two, I've got quite a bit of experience at Walmart related to virtual reality. So give you a little bit of background on me. I'm currently the CEO for Skills VR, which is a learning and development enterprise platform for virtual reality. But prior, I spent 23 years at Walmart, have worked, I'm actually an industrial engineer by trade. So don't know how I ended up in the learning and development space, but I think my name predicted my future and I just ignored it. But worked in supply chain, international, store operations, HR, learning and development throughout my career. Last role was Chief Learning Officer for the Walmart US business, where we were responsible for about 1.6 million associates, training them. And about 6 years ago, we rolled out virtual reality across all of Walmart US. So we bought 18,000 Oculus Go's, which was pretty much all they had at the time. One of our biggest pride points was we delayed the release for Target because we bought them all, so they couldn't sell them. So that was maybe part of the reason we bought so many. Maybe not. And then we had 1.2 million associates going through virtual reality. So what I'm here to talk about is all of the good, the bad, and the ugly that we had to scale it, to get people to use it, to get the justification for it, the proof for it. So that's me. So the first part I'll talk about is how do you create and sell the initiative? Everyone thinks VR is for games and for kids. Every finance person, every leader you talk to, that's their first inclination about virtual reality is it's something my kids use and it's for games. And so they don't understand the impact of it. So the number one thing is experiencing it really, really matters. So one of the things we did real early on was I pulled all the C-level leaders into a room and had them go through walk the plank on a virtual reality experience. And they watched each other. So if you don't know what walk the plank is, it's where you go up on top of a skyscraper. There's a 6-inch board that you have to walk out, and then you have to step off. And you're about 1,000 feet in the air. None of them could do it. Not a single one. They all watched each other do it, and they all laughed at each other because they couldn't do it. But when it was their turn, they couldn't. And after that, I didn't have to explain why virtual reality was so impactful and you believed it was real. So that took care of the problem. So it's very important. Get people to experience it, then they instantly understand it. They will not understand it until they put a headset on. The second one is go after a big problem that everybody agrees is a problem. A lot of the times when you're trying to test something out, you go after something small, go big. Find a problem that everybody agrees is a problem that needs fixed, that has a clear ROI, and go after that one. Because it is very difficult to justify learning and development, especially technology. If everyone agrees it's a problem, then there's no question about what you got to go do. The third one is the meetings before the meeting. So I know it sounds very bureaucratic, but if you wait till the final meeting to get approval to start talking to people, you're going to fail. They have to feel like you went to them before and they're part of the solution, and that you want their opinion, you want their input, you want their guidance before you go into the big meeting. And so everybody in the meeting you've already met with individually, and they all feel like they're super important as part of this program, and they'll defend it as their own. So it's very important to go feed everybody's ego before they get in the big meeting, and they all feel like they own it, and they'll all agree with it and fight for it. And the last one is end user feedback. So a lot of times finance is pushing the decision, but the operations team that you're going to deliver it for the customer, they're the ones that at the end of the day can make the call. And if their team, their end users are screaming how great it is, then they will ignore financials sometimes and ignore finance guidance to go please their end user. So it's really important before you go for the big approval, have some anecdotal feedback from the end user for the team you're supporting to say they love it. Don't put the stuff they hated in there, just put the good stuff. Save the bad stuff for later. But really push that the end user likes it and get their feedback, so that way it rounds out the whole thing, because a lot of times there's more emotion than there is financial. And the leaders that support the business you're supporting will love the fact that the end users actually like it. All right. So how do you break it down into the deliverables? So this one is really important, because a lot of times you try to combine these together and you lose people. So the first thing is you've got to make sure everybody understands and believes in the technology. So separate that out from whatever problem you're going. So the way we did it was walk the plank. I put every leader through walk the plank to show the impact and the power of the technology. So no matter what it is, find the cool thing that makes people understand the impact of the technology and prove that out first. So everyone agrees that, yep, virtual reality, in this case, virtual reality is what we think it is. It's got this huge impact. People believe it's real, it's experiential. And so we never had to debate whether the technology was valid or not. So that's the step one. And that's not an easy step, but make sure, don't move to the next one until everybody agrees the technology has validity. The second is, then you go and you find the big problem and prove out that this technology that everybody already agrees with will actually can solve a problem that we have. And so you've got to be really careful about picking a really good use case, one that fits the technology you're using, and two, has an ROI that you can easily track. So for virtual reality, what was great for us is you can prove the behavior is different, because now you can track where people look and how they move and what they say. And so we could actually statistically prove that someone changed their behavior when they were using virtual reality. Whereas in our old method, all I could do is tell them, yeah, they answered the questions right, and they sat through it. But that doesn't mean the behavior was different. And we saw over and over that it wasn't. So we went after, actually we did something very technical, a wet wall, which I'll talk about in a minute, but we picked a technical thing that was really hard to train and put it in virtual reality that reduced our training time by tenfold, and it got them more efficient faster. And so that's what we had some very clear, and that moves into proof of impact, where you've got a clear ROI and benefits out of it. So end user feedback is super important because it ties the emotional connection to everything. But you've got to have hard data that shows this is faster and this is better and has a stronger outcome. And so those three are really important in that sequence, because if you're trying to prove all three at one time, you're going to get caught in this death cycle and death spiral of, well, is this technology really going to last? Is it going to do this? Lots of challenges around technology and how long, is it a fad? So prove out that first. All right. I'm trying to go quickly so we can answer questions, because I like questions better. So some success stories. Technical skills are great for virtual reality. Something that you have to be able to really get into and work with over and over works really great. So I talked about the wet wall. So in retail, the wet wall is the leafy green vegetable area in a grocery store, in the produce area. It's the highest throwaway area in a store, in any grocery store. You got humidity levels, temperature levels, moisture levels, high turnover from an employee perspective. And so it's a really hard area to train people on how to do the work. And when you do get them trained, they leave. So we built this was our first VR module, was a wet wall. It was about 3 to 5 minutes long. And basically an associate would have to put the VR headset on, walk down a wet wall aisle, and identify what was wrong and explain why. We timed it to kind of gamify it. And then at the end, it would go back and show you what you got right and show you what you got wrong, and you had to explain why you missed it wrong. It was taking us weeks to train someone to work on the wet wall before. In 3 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, anybody knew how to run the wet wall for a couple of reasons. One is they experienced it, and they felt like it was a memory, and so they knew what to do instinctively. And secondly, in 3 to 5 minutes, we could put every scenario that goes wrong in a week, versus them having to job shadow somebody and wait for the problem to happen and then learn what to do in the midst of all the other chaos with customers running around. With VR, here's the different situations. They have to identify them all at the same time, and they remember what to do. So that was where we realized how impactful this would be, is something so complicated that took weeks, we could now do in minutes, and they actually got it faster, and they saw the problems all at one time. The second one is soft skills, which is pretty intuitive for a lot of folks with virtual reality. We did a lot on empathy. And so one of the big ones that we did was around cashiers. So believe it or not, in retail, all customers aren't nice. They have bad days, and most of them have a bad day in our store. And so the poor cashier, every 30 seconds has to deal with a new person who's probably had a bad day. And so for them so think about every 30 seconds for 8 hours, 5 days a week, you're dealing with people. Some are great, some are not. And so what was happening was our cashiers were dehumanizing the process so they could survive, right? It's just too much to have 8 hours of just, you're stupid, you're slow, this is expensive, on and on and on. And so we were seeing our customer engagement scores drop because of it. And cashiers talk to every customer just about. And so what we built was a VR module where you were a cashier, customer came in the line, and there was 3 different scenarios. One was angry, one was short on money, and another one was distracted and forgot some stuff and had to jump out of line and go get it and was holding everybody up. And so the first customer comes through, you're the cashier, he comes up and he's super pissed off. This has taken so long, this is the easiest job on the planet, and you can't even do that, you must be an idiot. Like, I've been waiting in line for 30 minutes and it's been 1 minute, but to them it's 30. I don't understand why this is so hard. You need to go find a different job. This is too hard for you. Just, really ugly stuff. So you have to respond, and then it flips it and makes you the customer, and the customer's got a cell phone in the line, and this was a gentleman, and he's getting a text from his wife that his daughter is at her last dance recital. It starts in 10 minutes. You've promised all year you're going to go to one. You've never made one. She's crying, waiting for you. Where are you? Why is your family not important? That kind of stuff, right? And he's texting back, I've got a flat tire. I'm in line with Fix-A-Flat to get out there, but this cashier is so slow, I can't get through the line. And so it puts the reality of why this guy is so upset and angry and in a hurry, because he's about to miss his daughter's last dance recital that he's missed all year. And so it just humanized it, and it created this experience for our cashiers where they because they think it's real, that it changed their view of what was happening in the line. And the team did a great job of putting some taglines and things in it where, only you can, you have 30 seconds to make this person's day better or worse. What do you choose to do? And it was super impactful. The last one we did was probably the most impactful and the most unfortunate one that we had to do was active shooter. So obviously, in a retail environment, any environment these days, you've got chances of someone coming in with a weapon and trying to hurt people. And it happens, unfortunately, a lot in the retail environment. And we had e-learnings where we did active shooter, and everybody did the same thing, right? You click start, go to your phone. When it says hit next, you hit next, and no one paid attention. And only half of them ever actually did the training. So we built a virtual reality model on active shooter. We closed the store overnight and filmed an active shooter situation. No blood, no guts, but guns. You saw the gun, you saw the shooter, you heard the shots, and you had to decide what to do throughout that scenario. In our case, it was avoid, deny, defend. Everybody's got different things. And it guided you on what to do and how to do it. Very intense, very scary, but very real. And so we were putting probably 1 million people a quarter through that scenario. And what solidified it for us and told us it was the right thing to do was a couple of years ago in El Paso, Texas, we had a really unfortunate situation where a shooter came in the store and killed 24 people. But there was over 2,000 people in the store. And so as we were trying to understand what happened and why, the 24 were killed because they ran into a bank, which is in the front of the store, and there's no exit for a bank out. You have to go out through the store. So they were basically trapped. But the shooter didn't run out of bullets, didn't get stopped by the police. He ran out of people. And so in the process of trying to understand what happened, talking to every associate in the store afterwards, all of them said, because I did virtual reality training, I just knew what to do. I didn't have to think about what to do. I just reacted. It's like I'd been there before, and I just did it. And so we saved over 2,000 people because they felt like they'd experienced it before and knew what to do, and it wasn't the first time they'd reacted to it. So that's when we started to scale it even more and more. So super impactful ways to do it. So that's what you go after, is the super impactful stuff. All right, mistakes. Lots of them. I couldn't list this one, all of them, because we'd be here all day. Number one is you have to think about the future because technology changes so fast. So one of probably the biggest mistakes I made was we bought the 18,000 headsets outright, which is a lot of capital. And then 3 years later, we had to go back and ask for more capital to buy them again. And finance does not understand that technology ages in 3 years, and they want you to keep using it. And so think about the future and what's the best way to fund it in the long term. Is it a device as a service? Is it rental? Is it whatever it may be? But just understand and prepare your business that if it's a new technology, it changes really fast, and you're going to have to come back to the well a lot to do that. Secondly is prepare everybody that when you're first and early in a technology, it's going to be higher cost, right? Don't want to be bleeding edge, but just even when you're leading edge, you're going to incur some costs in the beginning that you may not incur if you waited for others to do it. But then when you wait for others to do it, you're following what they did versus you guiding the way the market goes. And so we had lots of discussions about the fact that we're paying more than we probably would if we waited a year, but we're ahead of it and we're guiding the direction it goes. So just understand that it's going to be expensive in the beginning. Third, probably the biggest one is don't chase the shiny object, right? Everybody gets enamored with technology and new stuff. And part of the problem I had was when I put everybody through Walk the Plank, all the leaders, they loved it. And all of a sudden, everything should be virtual reality. Everything. And we built hundreds of modules that we never used because leaders wanted to do it in virtual reality because it was cool and it was neat and it was new. If you can physically do it without hurting somebody or interrupting the customer flow or whatever, then do that. Don't create a virtual environment. We created one to stock shelves. Like I think back about it and it's like, what an idiot. But because all you gotta do is go out to the floor and you can stock a shelf anytime because we do it all day, every day. We didn't need a virtual reality module to stock shelves. So be okay with saying no, because what happened was we had so much useless material that people we were starting to get negative reviews on it because why am I doing it in virtual reality when I can just go physically do it on the floor? And so be careful and be brave enough to say, here's the use cases for it, and we won't go outside that, or otherwise it starts to diminish what you're trying to do. All right, I talked really fast so I could open it up for questions. So there's lots of learnings that I couldn't go through because we only had 20 minutes, but happy to answer any questions about anything.
Thank you. That was a very insightful talk. If you go back earlier to the early days adopting this technology, correct me if I'm wrong, Walmart was working with a tiny California startup called Trainor, right?
Yes.
And that was the actually original partner for you.
It was.
So my question to you, how on earth Walmart, such a huge company, started working with a tiny startup, and how you trusted them to go and you mentioned buying 18,000 devices, but the whole process, I would love to hear more. How was the vendor selection process for this specific?
Yeah, I got to be careful because now I'm the CEO of their competitor. But so I think we found them through they were doing virtual reality training for athletes. So we found them by accident. We went to the University of Arkansas. And saw a quarterback with a VR headset on learning the defensive plays for the next week's game. And that's where we got the idea of, wow, we could do training. And I don't believe that Striver was doing corporate learning at the time. They were only doing sports. And so that's how we got introduced to them. And as we started looking at what we needed to do to scale it, there was no enterprise platform at all for virtual reality. One didn't exist. And so we helped Striver think through how to create an enterprise platform for, it was out of necessity. They did a great job for us. Not as good as Skills VR would have, but I'm just kidding. But they did a great job for us, and there was nothing else existed. So that was really the driving factor was they were first in the game at the time. It was bumpy. Like I don't want to sugarcoat it. It was very bumpy because it was we were so early that it was really hard to do and clunky. But yeah, we got it. We did it together. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Do we have any other questions? All right.
Hey, thanks. By the way, great pitch here. So talk a little bit about kind of the timeline that this thing rolled out. And I'd be interested some more of the challenges that you had. You only listed 3. I'm sure there's
100.
Yeah.
Timeline was ridiculously aggressive. So and there's some of my former team here, I think, from Walmart. But one of my philosophies is, there they are in the back. I don't know why they're in the back. Go so fast no one can tell you no. Like before they know, you're done. Then it's like, oh, okay, well, let's just see how it goes. So that's one thing for me is once we saw it and got the buy-in and they said, okay, let's try it, before they could think about it, we were already going. Now, that's really hard on the team. It's really hard on any suppliers you've got, any vendors. But the longer you give people to think about it and research, just go. And know you're going to fail fast and be okay with a few failures. So let me see if I can get this right. From the time we met, we saw the VR at the University of Arkansas until we scaled it was probably maybe 2 years to go from 0 to 18,000 headsets in 5,000 stores. It's probably 2 years, which is ridiculously fast. And you just know that there's going to be some challenges with it, but it worked, and it scaled pretty quick. So you just got to be really aggressive. For me, that's what just go. Like it's okay if you break some stuff. If you're not breaking stuff, you're not changing stuff. And so just keep pushing. Some other challenges. Wow, there's so many. Every day you're going to get asked, what's the benefit of this? Mm-hmm. Every single day I got asked, why are we doing VR? What's the cost benefit? And so you've got to find ways to prove the ROI. So just in typical learning and development teams, that's not their strength, right? And so there might be a company that can help you with that, that has an ROI built in to where it'll help you justify each module. So that's really important. Every day I got beat up because what's the cost and what's the savings on it? And it's really hard to justify that. I think the other is we underestimated when you roll out a new technology, most people don't deal with that technology. And so no one knew how to use it. And so we had to assume that we learned really quickly, you have to assume that every single person has never seen it before. Even down to iPads. When we rolled out iPads before we did this, there was people who didn't know how to use an iPad. And we just didn't, in our ivory tower in the home office, didn't even comprehend that no one had used an iPad before. So we had to go back and train we assumed no one had ever used an iPad and trained everybody how to use one. So we had to do the same thing with virtual reality and assume no one had ever seen one and knew how to use it. And then I think the support structure, don't underestimate the calls you're going to get of it doesn't work. Well, did you charge it? What do you mean? Did you turn it on? What do you mean turn it on? What do you like so you get all these calls, and so you have the support structure ready, the call center, whatever it is, and a list of questions that need to be answered before you roll it out, because all of a sudden when you put out 18,000 headsets and you're getting a million calls a day, somebody's got to answer them, or no one's getting trained.
Thank you,
And so I
Andy.
think the infrastructure. Yeah.
We're at time, but I would love to get one more question in.
Yeah.
We are at time, so.
Yep. Go ahead.
Hey, thanks. You mentioned with the wet wall scenario that you experienced, some degree of time savings. I'm just wondering, how did you perform the assessment? Like, how did you assess the, time savings before and after?
Yeah, a couple of ways. One was how long the training took. So that's pretty easy. The old training took a week. The new training took 5 minutes, give or take. And then you have a productivity number. We knew how much they stocked, how many, like we knew kind of productivity-wise what they had to do in a day, and did they do it better or not, and then turnover. How fast do people leave? People leave because they don't like it or don't understand it. And so if they understand how to do it, they tend to stay longer. And so that's where it's really important, your first use case. Make sure you can track the before and after so you can prove to your finance team that this is something you want to go do.
Awesome. Well, that was an amazing, amazing presentation. If you guys haven't already, please make sure you follow the website as well as his LinkedIn. If you have any questions or concerns, you can find him around here.
Anyway. Awesome. Thanks.